Hello, I'm the Angry Spork. And lucky you, we're picking back up with Tom King's run on Batman. We left off with Bruce elaborating to Selina how he got so enraged that he almost stabbed Riddler in the face, only to be stopped by the Joker. Naturally, this meant the guy who saves people each night is no different from the insanity he frequently defends Gotham against, because that makes so much sense. Despite this, she agrees to marry him. So let's resume taking issue with Rebirth Batman, starting with the story, Rules of Engagement. Because Bruce is engaged to Selina, you see. It may have been too subtle for some people. Issue 33's cover features Batman on a horse in the desert, with a bat-shaped tapestry in the background. Wow, this director's cut of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny took a really unexpected turn. The alternate is Bats crouched on a parapet. Really good, if not story-specific. We open on him and Selina in, surprise, a desert, having to shoot her horse after it became too exhausted. They got a 14, maybe 15-hour trek ahead of them, wearing their suits beneath regular clothes, which I would think makes the arid climate worse for them, but what do I know? So they exchange I love yous and carry on. They need to gain access to Kadim, a country for war that's not particularly welcoming to superheroes. To get there, they arrive at a town and chat it up with the Tiger King of Kandahar. Not because he owned a questionable zoo or had a Netflix docuseries made about him, but because he's the best intel man around, according to Dick Grayson. Bats mentions him by name, so maybe this has to do with Nightwing's time as a super spy. Pony Ears asks if he can get them in or not, so the guy thinks a moment and leads their horse to their destination, stating that Grayson is an idiot. For saying how good you are with intel? Or because he swapped his color scheme to black and red for a while, because on that much we can agree. They stop at a passage guarded by a big muscly dude who's known the Tiger for some time.
For the kind of money you are offering, I'd open the gate for any man, but that is no man.
Whoops, guys, he noticed AO and party's over. I don't know if the League calling themselves the Justice League of America is canon again post-Rebirth, because it's mentioned once again, the guard in the desert saying he was selected by the JLA to turn away heroes, villains, or even armies. If Batman wanted to fight, that'd be one thing, he'd refuse all the same. But when Selina approaches, he asks the little girl if she expects them to dance. And since the burly bouncer had boasted refusing whole armies, of course Catwoman will make him regret that condescension. All off-panel, of course, so we skip to the guard's defeat, where he mentions there are rules, which even Batman agreed to, but Kyle just walks on his face as she, Bats, and Tiger mosey on into the cave. Man, the Appletinis in this club better be worth the trip. Bats is aware of the rules because, of course, he wrote them, so his super allies won't be following him inside, but given where they're headed, and the likelihood that he and his fiancée won't make it out alive, he's not worried about military or League interference, much less being arrested. While this has been going on, Grayson, Damian, and Duke Thomas are in the Wayne Manor study, along with Jason Todd trying to win a tug-of-war for his jacket against Ace. The Bat-Hound is not letting go, despite being ordered to several times, until Alfred strolls in and casually instructs them to do so, leading to Jason falling on his behindus. Good boy. I have to agree, humiliating Red Hood does make him a good boy. He tells them about Bruce's mission to Kadim, and that there's something else he didn't want Alfred revealing, but the butler figures they should know. There's a funny exchange between the sidekicks, figuring it's another dark secret threatening to destroy everything. Nice little jab to how many stories have relied on that, but Pennyworth stuns them when he spills the bat beans about Bruce's engagement to Selina. They're going to register at Walmart just as a joke. Shortly after the guard's defeat, Superman called Alfred, trying to rally the Justice League and wanting to know why Bats was silent. The manservant lies that Bruce is sleeping off scarecrow gas and could be out for hours or days. Jason irrationally blames Duke for this, saying as the latest Robin, he's supposed to brighten Bruce's dark side, prevent him from proposing to a villain and go on illegal missions to an off-limits country. Duke rightly points out not only Todd's not-so-luminescent history, but that Damian is the current Robin, who starts getting surprisingly emotional, even tearing up. He blames himself for this, knowing why his dad would go to Kadim. It's the current location of his mother, Talia al Ghul, who's being told of Batman's arrival and wants her swords ready. Also, her bed is full of naked people. You'd think the daughter of the Demon's Head would be able to afford more mattresses and more rooms if she was going to go ahead and open a bed and breakfast. Issue 34's cover sees Bats as the target of a game of Scimitar Tag, while the alternate is basically promoting the theatrical release of Justice League. We get some snappy banter between the betrothed about what constitutes a lot and if Wayne is making fun of his bride-to-be.
Cat, I may be wearing a leather bat costume, but do I look crazy enough to make fun of you?
That's actually supposed to be leather? You've been in the desert for at least a full day. How have you not died from dehydration?
I'm Batman.
Well, I walked myself right into that one, didn't I? They're surrounded by sword-wielding warriors, shown from various angles on 2 splash pages and a 2-page spread. The latter alone is enough to show the odds against them, and their previous patter aside, kinda makes the previous 2 splash pages feel a little fillery.
You look lovely.
Sure, you say that now. Wait till I've got their blood all over me. Selina has a very unconventional skincare routine, but hey, it works for her. Talia watches from a distance, informed by one of her men that the intruders are engaged. I bet the Robins won't much like that some rando half a world away from Gotham just casually knew, somehow, possibly before they did. Talia cuts her hand with her sword. Whether this was accidental or intentional from hearing the news is unclear, and orders her men to do as they do.
Woohoo! All-day recess! Everyone to the jungle gym!
As our heroes fight off the goons, Bats notices their jaws feel off when he punches them, meaning they must not have tongues. They're the silent soldiers of the pit, meaning, as Selina deduces, they work for Talia. Outside the entryway, Superman is keeping Damian out, despite the lad's threat to use magic to end the Man of Steel, because kryptonite would be too obvious, you see. However, Clark mentions that even an attempt on his life would ruin Robin's relationship with his son John. He empathizes with the kid, but the League made a deal with the UN, no one in or out. He flies off to deal with an alien invasion in Central City, so Damian decides to wait outside the cave, with Grayson keeping him company. Selina and Bruce were in the desert so long, one horse had to be mercy shot. Then they traveled at least another 14 hours to get to a guy that would lead them to Cottam. When they finally got to the entrance, the Robins were all together in Wayne Manor. So, did the Bird Bros just teleport here or what? Even the fastest bat plane would have to take more than a couple of hours. Whatever the span of time is supposed to be, after taking out all the henchmen, Bats figures their true intent was to tire them out, as Talia approaches, armed and telling him to grab a blade, because it's always about sword fights in her family. When Wayne refuses, she goes on the offensive, and it's clarified the two are here looking for Holly Robinson, Selina's friend that killed 237 people and fled to Cottam. They'll leave once they've found her, and it's that whole leaving thing that Talia finds particularly irksome, as she manages to knock Bats down and stab him in the back. And weirdly, the swords just disappear in between panels, only to reappear in the next page. She then challenges Selina, who at first tends to her wounded future husband, but when it's clear Al Ghul isn't going to let up, she pulls a sword from an unconscious goon's shoulder and stands ready to fight, ending the issue. Number 35 sees the two holding blades right up to each other's stomachs.
Oh, seems like everywhere I look, people are enjoying knives.
The alternate cover proclaims it as the 800th issue of the Batman title. DC was so worried about their continuity confusing readers, but the 35th issue also being the 800th? Nah, not confusing at all. And wouldn't you know it, as the two start fighting, who happens to be nearby watching but Holly, the woman who let Selina take the fall for all those murders. What a coincidence. Talia monologues about how, as soon as she could walk, her dad put a sword in her hand and instructed her to fight or die. Every day she would train, sometimes winning, sometimes dying and getting revived in the Lazarus Pit. Despite how tired she would be, she would continue fighting, learning, and now certain she'll kill Selina as they quarrel down some stone steps like this is an Errol Flynn movie. Wow, that reference is older than I am. Kyle admits that's an impressive story, but she not only didn't know her father, but was never given a sword, having only ever used one maybe twice before at best. And yet, she's holding her own. On the one hand, Selina's had a rough upbringing of her own, acquiring skills that make her a formidable opponent. On the other hand, the fact that Talia has spent all but the first year of her life training with a blade could stretch the imagination that Cat Lady is faring so well. But it's not like either one of them is going to end up dead at the end of this, so... While Bats is lumbering around, Damian states he doesn't know or care why his dad proposed to Catwoman, or why he didn't tell his surrogate sons. His choices are his own. He's Batman and Damian is Robin, a remark that Grayson finds endlessly amusing. Back at the sword fight, Talia finds it laughable that a woman who came from nothing considers herself equal enough to marry one such as the detective, whereas he's the only one in all the world that Miss Al Ghul finds equal to herself. Selina snarks back that as much as they may love him, or as much as she wants Bruce to love her, she, like anyone else, will always be second place to a vow he took at 10 years old. A child's idiotic fantasy. And their wedding vows are gonna suck! Really, there's deconstruction and then there's just reductive, derisive, and cynical commentary. But she goes on, that in a world of Superman and Mr. Terrific, Batman will betray anyone, even his loved ones, in the name of justice. He's not the best, he's just the stupid man that Selina stupidly loves. Really took Weird Al Yankovic's song to heart, didn't she?
You wouldn't dare do something that stupid! I am Redgar! I dare to be stupid!
Betting that's going to play at their wedding reception. Grayson figures they weren't told about the engagement because Batman isn't happy, which Damian disagrees with, so OG Robin elaborates. Bruce is a lot of things, but he's not selfish, giving what he has, willing to bleed first in a fight, and it's not easy for him to ask for something.
But being happy, that's not bleeding. That's not giving. That's asking for something.
Studies show that acts of kindness and charity, i.e. giving, can increase happiness in the giver. But Grayson's not entirely wrong here, and I get what he's trying to say, that it's more about asking someone to be part of their lives, which entails a level of sacrifice on their part, and Bruce's sense of self-sacrifice is a notable theme throughout this entire run. Talia's knocked Selina to the ground, ready to run her through, maybe throw her in the pit so they can go another round, but the thief isn't wasting one of her 9 lives on her, so grabs the blade and boots her in the face, sending her a good 10 feet to a lower level. Seeing Holly nearby, Catwoman sticks the sword in Talia's back or shoulder blade and goes to have a chat. Feels like she should have had a more intense reaction than that, but hey, she was trained to be tough and all that. Holly is worried that her old friend is going to make her confess to be with Bats, but instead, Kyle asks her to help because she very much wants a life with him. Talia, having removed the sword and made her way to Bats, admits she likes his betrothed. But she did put a sword into my back, so I'm going to buy the cheapest wedding gift I can find, like plastic spoons from the dollar store. Soon after, Bruce and Selina exit through the Cottam Cave and find the 2 sidekicks there. As Grayson helps carry his injured mentor, Damian asks if his father is happy, and with a quick look to his fiancée, he says he's getting there. The story ends with a repeat of the 14 or 15-hour dialogue from the beginning, and Damian being in no way surprised that both his parents ended up getting stabbed in the back. That was rules of engagement, and while I can see why some would want there to be a kind of meeting of love interests given the proposal and all, it's peppered with things that rub me the wrong way. Not just how Damian and Grayson managed to get to Cottam so quickly, a noticeable plot hole, but not my biggest problem. What I've grown a little tired of is how King describes Bruce's mission. Yeah, we get it, a 10-year-old vowing to war on crime, and literally becoming a super serious vigilante is silly. But the way it's repeated as something to be mocked can feel petty, even though I don't think the writer was going for that at all. It does kind of help demonstrate how much Selina accepts her beau for all his faults, which is fine, but the extent it's taken, saying he'd betray her for justice, feels off to me. Like punching the jaw of someone with no tongue, you might say. Yeah, he was going to turn her in for those murders she confessed to, but he didn't seem to believe she was guilty anyway. Also, what's up with Holly? She didn't leave with the pair, so did she say no, or is she just gonna find a commercial flight back to Gotham and they're just taking her at her word? I'm further confused by what the Talia and Bruce history even is anymore. She refers to him as detective, not beloved, but she definitely wanted to evaluate Catwoman. I get the impression that maybe the canon now is that the attraction is one-sided based on how Talia admires his prowess or something, but I can't really tell. There's also some interesting insights on Damian. Even though the mission was to retrieve Holly, he seems to think they were going to see his mom and blames himself for reasons we're not privy to. He goes so far as to threaten Superman, not with kryptonite, but a magic ritual that would require more personal sacrifice. It's the cooler option, so maybe he was just being his usual boastful self, or perhaps he was that desperate to intervene on his parents' fighting. Maybe take the blame for something he had no part in because he's jumping to conclusions. Next up, because this reference hasn't gotten old, we have Super Friends, with an unrelated interlude. Issue 36's cover has bats swinging over the Daily Planet, with Supes flying nearby. The alternate looks like he's in the middle of ducking from an explosion, or he's at a really intense rave. While Superman prevents a train from dropping into a huge crater in its path, he and Lois have a disagreement over comms. He thinks Bruce should call him, since he's the one getting married, and his wife thinks that doesn't mean Clark can't call first, since they're both always busy with one thing or another. And I'm sure he's sitting at home right now, twiddling his thumbs. It's training for when some Arkham lunatic builds an elaborate death machine that can only be deactivated through precise thumb twiddling. It's gonna happen one of these days, just you wait. Similarly, while taking out some masked gunmen, Catwoman insists to a reluctant Batman that he call Big Blue, regardless of whom Pointy Ears considers his closest friend. There's also this line about not paying Alfred and how many cucumber sandwiches he makes every week. It's clearly a joke, but it feels tonally disconnected. Maybe because these stories have been pretty heavy, and when reading this, it's Catwoman scowling as she busts down a door. Perhaps the dialogue placed over a close-up of Bats smirking a little while saying it would have helped. Anyway, Lois is interested in meeting Catwoman, though Clark disapproves of letting someone with her criminal history in on their secret. Lane, however, figures that if they trust Bruce as a friend and colleague, they can trust whomever he does. I don't know, he trusted a guy named Onomatopoeia, and he turned out to be a supervillain. Not to mention John Paul Valley. Oh, and let's not forget Alfred in that Wakizashi incident. After some digging, Lois discovered Selina is good at finding people who try to hide, and might already know given how Clark hides his identity. Sure enough, Catwoman tells her fiancé how unsurprising it is that a mild-mannered reporter that looks like Superman turned out to be Superman. More to show that if Bruce not calling him has anything to do with protecting his secret, she already knows. She also mentioned she found Bats, making me wonder if that's supposed to mean that the canon is that she learned who he was on her own, instead of him unmasking. Who can say anymore? I'm a thief. I find hidden things. That's why she tends to ruin most every Easter egg hunt she's been in. Also all that stealing.
What? Oh, yes. All that stuff I did.
On the way to see an informant, Kent notices that someone's thrown a boulder at them from far away. He gets ready to deal with it while Lois gets their guy somewhere safe to talk, and reminds her husband to call Bruce. Meanwhile in Gotham, Bats is using his go-to of dangling someone high above the streets to get them to talk. Catwoman asks if this works, and he says, yeah, they spill the beans when they're afraid, which she finds funny, since now the detective seems too afraid to talk to the alien Boy Scout. Speaking of, sometime later, he's battling the energy duplicate of Dr. XX, admitting to Lois over comms that he didn't make that call. Lois needs to look into something called 20 Corp, how well their railroad insurance is doing, as the enemy takes off, leaving Supes in a hole in the ground, while she says they'll hash this out later. No excuses, even if worlds are in crisis. Sorry, Planet Phoenix 12, you'll have to deal with the asteroid barrage headed your way until after Superman chats with his rich work buddy. In the cave, Selina is on all fours, suit strategically unzipped, suggesting Batman is ashamed of her. Of all the things he's probably feeling right now, I doubt that's one of them. This seductive tactic doesn't result in what she intended, as he denies the suggestion and tries to redirect the case of plutonium delivered to a Dr. 10, who is a likely recent Arkham release, Simon X. The two couples head out for their respective missions, Batman and Lois each saying they can do this alone, but Catwoman and Superman insisting on joining them.
I don't need a partner, except for all the times a Robin or a Batgirl or my butler helped me on a case, got me information, saved me from a serious injury or death, or rescued people in danger on a nightly basis across town when I couldn't be there. Nope, I've never needed any assistance whatsoever.
The two capes then monologue to their ladies about how the other grew up, and despite having the capacity or incentive to be more malevolent, they took their respective pain, whether it was being the outsider from a destroyed planet or losing family to random violence, and turned it into hope. While the other had every opportunity to do something else, each feels he had to do what he does with his abilities or resources, and how the other is simply the better man. While one pair sneaks in through the ducts of a building and the other takes the elevator, each says they're not really friends, or they can't be, Because who's Batman to Superman, or vice versa? Because we all know you can only be friends with people who are just like you in every way. No exceptions, right? Agree on everything, have the same background, be from the same place. I could expect this from Bruce, but come on, Clark, you know better! In a genuinely funny moment, the four meet on the same floor. The Cape's shocked at seeing each other, while Lois and Selina shake hands like it's no big deal. Dr. XX and his duplicate suddenly appear, the heroes take them out in one punch, and Soup suggests they all get some grub. Issue 37's cover has a twist on the face-off style of imagery. Usually it's for opponents about to throw hands, but here it's clear everyone's cool with each other. The alternate has the engaged duo on a rooftop. Batman's new approach to deter shoplifters by just glaring at people entering the store would not prove as successful as he had hoped. The four are denied entry to a fair because it's superhero night and patrons have to be in costume to get in. Rather than find someplace else to go, Lois has a solution. One that Bruce hates. Side note, because I'm feeling nitpicky, editors missed how fiancé is misspelled in this bubble, though correct in the very next one. Anyway, the guys end up swapping costumes, Clark wearing his glasses over the bat cowl, and while Lois dresses in the cat suit, Selina is just in Lane's dress, managing to get past the clerk by seductively meowing a couple of times. Look, the guy's eyes even turned into hearts. Apparently, Selina's superpower is detecting specific cat fetishes in nerds with the mildest of authority. From there, it's a lot of fun. Humorous dialogue and exchanges, very different behavior in the Tunnel of Love, the guys having a bit of a cape measuring contest in the batting cage, the gals getting to know each other over a shared flask, and both couples remarking in one way or another how odd it is that a guy who wars on crime is marrying a thief. But the ladies are having more fun with it. Lois's purse is stolen by a guy in a question costume, but his escape is short-lived between Clark's supervision and Bruce's throwing arm, with the crook getting bonked on the head with a baseball as he quotes Ayn Rand. Honor is self-esteem made visible in action seems to ring hollow when your action is stealing from someone, which doesn't feel particularly honorable. I'll have to consult some Klingons on this.
You will die without honor.
More relationship talk over a couple of pages of reused panels of ice cream consumption where Bruce admits how little he really knew about his parents, and that he doesn't have much of a model on how marriage is supposed to work.
Technically I have kids, so should I watch Married with Children for advice?
He's in the dark on matrimony, and Clark, who had a similar experience while courting Lois, says that Bruce does pretty well in the dark.
So you're saying I should tie her hanging from a lamppost and leave her to be arrested by the police? I don't know, we kind of went through something like that already, but she didn't commit the crime. It was kind of a whole thing.
They leave the fair, but the night isn't done yet, as the guys want to swap suits back and settle something from the batting cages. Seeing if Batman can hit a pitch by Superman. As Selina shows off the thief's wallet she snagged as he went by, she calls him a mugger, but that doesn't seem accurate. He was a literal purse snatcher. Clark is reassured that what Bruce is attempting is impossible, but he's ready. We get the wind-up, the pitch, and the issue ends on, of course, Batman getting vaporized by the ball hitting him in the sternum. Nah, he hits it because he's Batman and it's his book. I liked this two-parter more or less, mostly our hero's time at the fair. It was a fun, relaxing story of these characters being social, not always Bruce's strong suit, and he's noticeably uncomfortable among the many cosplaying patrons. Clark is a lovable dork, and their significant others get to bond. Part 1 wasn't so bad, but I questioned the whole mentality that neither of the world's finest considers the other really their friend, for whatever reason. It's especially perplexing with Superman, given how well known he is as wanting to be a friend to everyone. The sentiment does seem to be contradicted with their time at the fair, so maybe King was going for a subtle point that they are friends despite not thinking that way? I could be wrong. On to our interlude, The Origin of Bruce Wayne. You see, when a rich man and his wife love each other very much, issue 38's cover sees Batman and a small kid being beset by graffiti of Zsasz and Two-Face? Is this an intervention because they think he's got enough sidekicks already?
Did you lose another Robin?
The alternate is Bat sitting on his Batcycle, leaning back a little, looking kinda logy. That superhero fair corn dog really isn't sitting well with him. A kid named Matthew Warner finds his parents dead in the kitchen, strangely juxtaposed to Bruce greeting Selina. In the present, the lad is recalling the event with Wayne. mentioning how his dad loved his job on the Wayne board, admired Bruce, and there's even a joke he had with Pappy that the butler, Taylor, carries on, calling Matthew Master Bruce. The kid drops his tea, breaking down and asking if the pain ever goes away, but all the billionaire can say is that sadly, it'll always be scratched into him. Look, I'm sorry for your loss, but I have a super hot fiancé waiting for me at my own mansion, so could we maybe wrap this up? Mr. Zsasz is suspected of the murders, and was caught on camera making 2 new scars on his arm. However, Bats determines he was locked up at the time of the murders, and is unlikely to have someone kill for him.
I have a bat cave, I drive a Batmobile, I throw a Batarang. Some people break their patterns. Some don't.
Well, yeah, but you changed your costume a few times.
That's totally different.
Outer trunks, no outer trunks, you've been gray and blue, all black.
You've made your point, Jim.
Then there was that time you wore a different color batsuit every night.
I don't care what Superman says, that never happened.
In the cave, Bats analyzes the letter the stab-happy inmate used to make his newest marks, which was one of dozens sent to the asylum, a vaguely Christian call for penitence that was thought to be harmless junk mail. However, there is no Book of Ned in the Bible. And no, it has nothing to do with Flanders.
Idly hey!
Go home.
Doodly-doo!
The alleged passage is actually an elaborate code for an address on Dennis O'Neil Avenue, where Batman finds 2 more dead bodies, who just so happen to be Zsasz's parents. He tries talking to the killer a second time, saying that his folks were only targeted because of him, suggesting he killed them in a way to justify his new scars. Victor gets a little agitated by this, and Bats makes him go night-night. Matthew has become distraught that the cops haven't found the real killer, but Bruce, meeting with him again, assures that they'll be brought to justice. Then there's another pair of murders, with both victims' arms positioned like clock hands, suggesting Two-Face, possibly trying to frame Zsasz. Clock King is going to be so upset he wasn't even considered as a suspect. That doesn't make much sense to the Caped Crusader, feeling that this is someone trying to copy the more famous villains, but trying to be quick about it and making mistakes. After some more digging, he arrives at the apartment of Mr. Taylor, Matthew's butler.
Candygram of justice.
Bats throws the manservant into the zoo's lion enclosure, getting him to confess that as Matt's guardian, he controls all the money.
Hey, Selina, I was thinking of you at work tonight. Threw a guy to a pack of predatory big cats. Thought you'd like that.
Matthew now wonders who will take care of him, and Bruce has promised to personally pursue several options. I hope Alfred's already told him he's met his sidekick quota. He repeats his being scared is a chance to be brave mantra, and Matt is amazed at how nice he is, and hopes he can be just like Mr. Wayne someday.
Lower your expectations.
But later, as Alfred is serving him and Miss Kyle dinner, something dawns on Bruce. How Alfred would do anything for him. That framing 2 Arkham regulars for the murder of the Warners was fundamentally silly and almost childish. I don't know about that. Seems if you want to end someone in Gotham and cover your tracks, pinning it on one of the many nut jobs with already high body counts seems like an idea most people would have. He later finds Matt at his parents' grave, using a knife to scratch out their names and carving the names of Thomas and Martha Wayne, which are also carved into his cheeks.
What was the thought process?
Nightmares.
After interrogating Taylor again, Bats found that the butler was ordered by the boy to make him into Bruce Wayne, so he killed his parents. He offers to help the disturbed kid, but he rejects it, smacking Batman and declaring himself Master Bruce, the cure for the sickness in Gotham, using his suffering for the good of others. As Wayne returns to his fiancée, much more somber, and the boy is wheeled into, I assume, a mental hospital in a straitjacket, the comic ends with Batman telling him he's not Bruce Wayne, just a sick kid with dead parents. To which Matthew responds, "What else is Bruce Wayne?"
Genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist.
This was actually a pretty interesting one-shot. It follows the title's trend of deconstructing elements of Batman with a fairly decent mystery, though it has certain hiccups. So the butler killed 3 couples, trying to make it seem like one Arkham escapee or another did it. Okay, but I don't know about it being particularly childish, which is the impetus for Bruce figuring this out. An anadrome is a word whose spelling is derived from the reversal of another word, like drawer and reward. So using that to tell Zsasz his parents were dead feels pretty complex, and a bit convenient that he'd accept murders as his own through some twisted transitive property. Though it seemed rather sloppy that Taylor would implicate Two-Face when his own apartment number contains several 2s in it. Matthew's become like Bruce Wayne thing kind of echoes Hush, who has his own fixation on the Playboy, but the added delusion of calling himself Master Bruce. Another dark mirror foe in a way, emulating Batsy's childhood trauma, but as a kid with no perceivable skills or expertise, I don't see him being a big threat to the Dark Knight anytime soon, except for a feeling of, there but for the grace of God go I. We now arrive at the second half of Super Friends, featuring the last third of DC's Trinity. Issue 39's cover features Wonder Woman ready for a fight as Batman watches in the background, looking all grumpy, and a caption teasing the revelation of a secret eternal vow. Bruce and Diana promise never to tell another soul that they both really like Squidbillies. The alternate sees Wendy standing on some rubble, her lasso drawn, and wearing Batman's cape like she won it in a poker game. Someone's turned on the bat signal and Gordon storms his way to the roof in a fury, since only he's allowed to use it. Then he finds Wonder Woman standing there, saying she needed to get a hold of Batman. He's already there, so Gordon and his men leave so they can chat in private.
You could have used the JL communicator.
I wanted to try the signal. I thought it might be fun.
The bat signal is not a beeper.
She tells him that she's been contacted by the Gentle Man, seen here with what I hope he calls his gentle mace. He's been eternally tasked with vanquishing the hordes of Gehenna, monsters whose numbers are derived from mankind's sins, so they're endless in number and are constantly trying to break into the mortal realm. So he would really appreciate it if everyone would cut back on the stealing, the killing, the lying, the grifting, and other stuff I probably can't mention on YouTube. Go away, you! Bats and Wendy found out about this ongoing battle while on a League mission, briefly fighting alongside GM and feeling how impossible his task was. He'd been fighting for thousands of years against an unending threat, and the only way to open a portal to leave is from our side. Before Zatanna got her co-workers out, they offered him a chance to have a day off while they fought in his place, an offer he has now accepted. As superpowers don't quite work the same in this monster realm, fighting prowess is more crucial. Batman and Diana have an advantage over, say, Superman. Bruce is decked out in some bat-themed armor, a sword at his hip, very much a Dark Knight. And his bride-to-be says he looks ridiculous.
Hey, Mattel designed it, and I'm under contract to wear it at least once to sell the action figures. Cut me some slack.
Later, though telling him not to pay any heed to that remark, Wonder Woman kind of agrees that, yeah, he does look a bit ridiculous. Which I don't agree with. I think he does kind of look pretty slick. But hey, Diana apparently finds all men who try to fight ridiculous looking because they're so eager and use weapons, as she wields a sword to open a portal. If she left it at how some men are just overly eager to prove themselves in pointless fights and scuffles, that would be one thing. But she's fought along some of the best, most noble heroes ever who fight to protect cities or entire planets. I think maybe King was going for an Amazon warrior woman attitude, and the dialogue just got away from him. Because this doesn't quite feel like the Wonder Woman I'm used to. They proceed with a monster slaying on a 2-page spread, where now she backtracks on how her cohort looks. Time passes, Wendy cleans off some blood and remarks on how Bats plans to marry a woman that's not here with him. Instead, he's with Diana, which she points out as he's struggling with a monster. They've already reached the point where taking out sin-spawned demons is getting blasé. That was quick. Also, somewhat cheesecakey shot of her butt, because comics. Meanwhile, Selina is chaperoning the gentleman around, taking him to Batburger in a suit left for him. After a mugger fails at robbing them, GM elaborates that he is currently married, and his wife is in Gotham, much to Selina's surprise. Turns out, time passes differently in the other realm, but he didn't age, so while he spent thousands of years fighting, about a year passed in the mortal realm. A few regular hours has become 10 years for Bruce and Diana, resting in a cave after many harsh battles. Their warrior friend hasn't opened the gate, leaving them with the everlasting fight, and each other as they lean in closer. This is the most elaborate episode of Cheaters I have ever seen. Issue 40's cover has the Amazon in front of the bat signal, with pointy ears perched atop, which kind of would have made more sense for the last issue's cover, but I digress. The alternate is the two of them standing and the questionable decision to have a lighting flare draw attention to her belt line. In an alley, Selina has knocked the warrior to the ground, probably messing up that nice suit, where he admits the heroes didn't know about the time difference between realms. He spent millennia fighting monsters, so a threat from a well-trained cat burglar doesn't scare him, and only he can open the gate to free them, which he won't do until he sees his wife. I calculated the best I could with the information in the story, and it seems that a year of normal time was about 43,800 years in the Horde dimension. So I imagine a lot like working retail, but with less Christmas music around wintertime. Despite the setting being perfect for a trashy romance novel, I assume, the Leaguers agree they can't engage in any intimacy. Bruce loves Selina, and Diana loves Steve Trevor. Both are good people that deserve loyalty, so Wendy tells her friend to be good, otherwise she'll smack the silly little pointy ears off his cowl. They proceed to fight the Horde as years go by, though we see it non-linearly. First at 24 years, then 19, then 14, perhaps to show how they're still fighting at a later year, even though many years before, each hero at some point felt like they could not go on, showing their highs and lows that they're pushing through long after feeling like giving up, finding strength not in sexual gratification or romantic entanglement, but working together for a purpose greater than themselves, even if they miss their pets, be they dog or kangaroo. And look, random shooting star! If only they had seen it, they could make a wish for some magic barrier to keep the Horde at bay forever. I mean, this is the DC universe where all sorts of magic exists, so it'd at least be worth a try. Selina has taken the gentle man named Julian to see his wife, Angela. They talk a while, she remarks about making detective, getting some praise from Commissioner Gordon, but it's not long before Catwoman is fed up and pulls GM aside for a chat. He wants another couple hours, which is another decade for Bats and Wendy, but Kyle can't abide that. Shortly, they're in Bruce's limo, Julian admitting he lied, because no matter how good the heroes are, they would not have agreed to such a sacrifice if he'd been upfront about the time difference. He's fought every day to save the mortal realm, slaying demons, but could not go another day without seeing his wife. I tried carving her face into a cave wall, but she kept looking like a South Park character. I'm not really that good at drawing. Returning to the gate site, Julian is again suited up, as Selina says that growing up, she never saw the kind of love he has with Angela, and thanks him for the understanding this night has brought her. But he declines the acknowledgement as he spins his mace.
Not while I am showing what a fool I am. That the only thing I truly stupidly know is that I am the gentle man, and the Horde is everlasting.
That's actually two things, but you're the one with the spiky weapons, so carry on. He slams the mace to the ground, opening the portal and swapping back with the heroes, returning to the fight with gusto, and ending Batman and Wonder Woman's ordeal after 37 years. Shortly, I guess after Bats took off his armor in the park, since he's down to his more form-fitting attire, the Leaguers say goodbye, and Diana thanks Catwoman for saving them years or more against the Horde. Despite being considered a criminal by others, Wonder Woman calls her a hero, and is happy that her bat-clad friend has found someone to love. When next the gentleman needs a break, Selina insists on joining her husband in battle, and Wendy leaves, suggesting that, with her aid, perhaps the Horde won't be so everlasting. The comic ends with Batman saying there was a moment where he wasn't bad, but not good enough, because he's new at this. But Selina tells him to try harder. That was the end of Super Friends, and it was a good two-parter that explored a different aspect of Batman's engagement: fidelity. While he and Diana kinda toyed with the idea of being a couple in the pre-Flashpoint continuity, that doesn't seem to be canon here. She kind of reads more like her iteration from the early seasons of the Justice League cartoon. Maybe not quite as much a fish out of water, but perhaps a tad naive and uninformed. Almost like she hasn't known Bats that long, isn't as close a friend as I'm used to reading, but that could just be me. One could argue that the temptation for Bruce to cheat would be stronger if it was with someone he had genuine feelings for before proposing to Selina, but I don't think that's absolutely necessary. They're two people alone together who both have the compulsion for intimate companionship with others that are not present. It's sufficient enticement without recalling their what could have been from before the reboot. And both decide that, even if it's been literal decades, it's better to stay faithful to the ones they love rather than give in to baser urges, just for immediate satisfaction. Though I'm not sure how to take Bats saying he wasn't good enough. Unless he means the near kiss they had where they laughed off the idea of getting frisky. It's better that he made Wonder Woman laugh while his pants were on as opposed to off. The Gentleman seems to be more of a one-and-done character who, while fairly interesting with a cool design, I don't anticipate showing up again, even though I could be wrong. It seems odd that he speaks so regally when he's apparently a modern-day guy that's been away from his wife for about a year. and is surprised at Batman's popularity. We don't know the circumstances of how he was saddled with the task of fighting off sin-based monsters, or how he manages to contact Diana. It couldn't have been that long since she and Bats helped him out, and speaking of, how could they not have realized there was a time difference in the demon realm? Even if they were only with him a short time, that just means mere seconds would have passed in the mortal world. Seems like someone, especially a certain super-observant Bruce, would have noticed. They didn't age while fighting the Horde, which, in case you forgot, is everlasting, so that could have tipped him off. Or how Wayne never needed to shave, unless he did and just used his sword off panel or something. I would have liked some of the unanswered questions explained a bit more, like why a fierce warrior is called the Gentleman, or how the demons expect to get to Earth if the portal can't be opened on their side. But much like how they didn't bother calling in other capable fighters in the Justice League, the story was more about how Bruce committed to Selina in the face of temptation. Just the two of them would, of course, give them more privacy and play into the idea that only they would know if they were to cheat. Both him and Diana are praiseworthy in their resistance, especially since she is oft considered the hottest woman in DC, and Bats has had his share of trysts aside from Catwoman. It's admirable loyalty to their significant others that I don't think often gets a lot of attention or credit, so for that, I'm feeling more forgivable about other details. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.